Okay, and bonjour, konnichiwa, annyeonghaseyo, and an international hello around the world. Thanks for joining in for another exciting episode of Am I Streaming, Am I Dreaming, the Tuxedo Cast. And I've got a special guest today, Lil Red, model, dancer, content creator, German automotive enthusiast, joining us today and I've got some amazing questions for her. Today, I'd really love to go into your background and how you developed your passion for making creative content, music, and really connecting it to your aesthetic. And we really need to know how you came up with the name Lil Red. So thank you very much. Please tell us, how did you get started?
Hello, firstly, thank you for having me. Awesome. Wow, how did I get started? I think, geez, so I started working professionally in the entertainment industry from quite a young age in high school, in fact, from about 16. I've always obviously been a creative, and that's always spoken to me. And I think it just naturally kind of progressed from there as society and technology did. And it kind of all just fell into place and went through the motions.
Wow, you've really given me a good background on where you started. So, when you were about 16, did you always have the dream that performing was the type of thing you wanted to do?
Definitely. So I always had from a very young age that I was in some way going to be involved professionally in the arts, which I think now has changed for me a bit, funny enough, like in my older age, I guess. But from a young age, I did always have the intention to be as involved as possible in the arts. Now I still have the intention to be as involved, just not necessarily as a money making or career standpoint. Um, but yeah, still creative in any way possible.
Interesting. Were you part of the drama club or choir or anything like that in high school?
I did do drama till matric. And I was always in all the school plays and musicals and anything they had going on. I was there, I was in it and performing, and I loved every second of it. So throughout school, I think in any opportunity that I got to perform or be on stage, I was there.
Wow. Did you ever feel like nervous or you were always just naturally an extrovert?
I'm always nervous. Someone once said, as I mentioned, when I started working more professionally in high school, I used to work with a lot of older people. And something that has always stuck with me that one of them said backstage before a show when we were discussing nerves and being really nervous, because I do actually typically get really nervous. And she actually said to me, the day that you don't get nervous before going on stage, quit, because that's the day that something inside of you has died, because your nerves can be a positive thing. And I think we often look at nerves as something negative, but it doesn't need to be that. So it depends on what power you give to your nerves. So I think nerves are actually a good thing, because it's that excitement and that thrill of going out there and putting yourself out there in front of all these people.
Interesting. And I know you've always been big into dance as well. When did you first really get into dance?
So, wow, I started dancing when I could walk. I started getting into dancing at about 3 years old and never stopped. So that's what actually kickstarted my professional career in the entertainment industry, was dancing. So that's where things kind of actually started for me. And I'd like to say, my creative roots lies in dance. It's been a part of my life since I can remember.
Wow. What kind of dance were you doing?
So when I started out when I was younger, I did ballet for many years, over 10 years. But I actually ended up specializing in Latin and ballroom. So that was my forte, and I absolutely loved it. I miss it a lot still today.
Ballet. Ballet sounds really tough. Was the training quite intense?
Definitely. Even at a younger age, I was fortunate enough to train with a quite a well-known professional in the ballet industry in South Africa. And she was a huge inspiration. And she was tough because she wanted to get the best out of us that we could be. So I'm grateful for that. I think it taught me a lot of discipline, not only in the arts, but in life itself as well. So I'll always be grateful for what it gave me. And it built a lot of character and it built a lot of strength in me due to the fact that it was so tough. So it served its positive purpose in my life.
That sounds amazing. And I've spoken to a few different friends who've done ballet, and the benefits they mention, just the mindset, and I can really see how the need for setting a standard of quality of what you want, and a certain elegance and a certain poise. Did I describe some of the benefits of ballet like that?
100%. I think you've hit the nail on the head. And like I was saying, it's not only, it doesn't only give you that in dance, but it gives you that in life too. And I think a sense of confidence as well, and learning to overcome certain challenges. It definitely also benefited me when I switched over into other genres of dance. Having that background and foundation definitely benefited me and helped me catch on to other things a lot quicker.
Wow, I guess it was a pretty good workout too.
Definitely, that's for sure.
I'm going to go back to that question later on and really go into detail about some of the benefits of doing bar. And I do know lately, booty bar, the workout, has been getting more and more popular.
I've
So
seen
later
that,
on,
yes.
Lil Red may share some of the benefits of bar. And I
Good
have to ask, how did you come up with the name Lil Red?
question. Well, obvious dead giveaway. The red hair was the start of the name. So it actually wasn't me that came up with it. Someone that I was working with in the entertainment industry at the time. We were all sitting together, a bunch of friends, and just chatting. And he actually randomly just said, "Oh, Lil Red, pass me that." And from there, it kind of stuck on, and they all started calling me Lil Red, and it became somewhat a part of me and my nickname, and that's where we are now. And it's stuck ever since. And that was a good 5, 6 years ago, I think, about.
Maybe you've really run with it well and really made it part of your personality and brand in such a cool way. And I first heard about you when you were doing music, and I really want to know when you first saw yourself in going in the music lane.
Yes. Okay. So that was the start of kind of like a bit of a shift in my journey, I would say. So I was professionally dancing, and at the time, Deleuze, his current manager at that time, had reached out to me and said that they were looking for dancers to dance with him, and he was busy doing his one of his tours, a small tour, and I jumped at the opportunity to take on that from a dancing perspective. And from there, I obviously got a lot more involved in the industry and got to meet a lot of different people and learn a lot more about the music industry. Obviously, music's always been a passion of mine. Music and dance go hand in hand. And that kind of opened the door for me to start getting into studio for the first time and experimenting and just kind of seeing where it takes me. And that was kind of the start of the music journey for me.
Wow. And I think we could really add a little bit more context for the listeners of this particular time. So, at that time, hip hop was exploding, if I could call it the crunk era of hip hop. Baggy jeans, wild, colorful shoes. Pharrell was blowing up, and he had a shoe called the Ice Creams and Billionaire Boys Club, and that whole aesthetic was just wild. It was in the streets, and Deleuze is an SA, Africa, and international hip hop icon, and he was really pushing that swag, and that and it was everything. He was part of Amakip Kip, which was, if I could call it, a very iconic SA viral fashion. And when you saw those colorful shirts with the Ama Kip Kip logo, that was like the vibe of SA hip hop at the time. Trends have changed now, but that particular moment, if I could call it the Ama Kip Kip era, so there were so many interesting things happening. Bling, bling. Then at that time, I was like, all right, cool. YouTube was really taking off, and
Yeah, picking up.
the TV was still where you went to go get good music. You'd watch maybe Channel O or MTV or VH1 to get your dose of hip hop. Hip hop at that time, you found it in very certain places. You couldn't get it all the time unless you had hip hop friends. So that's when I came across you. Like, wait, wow, she's now doing music. It's like a movie. And not only were you doing music, you were doing it really well. As in, I could see the brand, the visuals, I could see the aesthetic, and it seemed well planned out. And the other thing about it is you went to Los Angeles, and that is like a big part of this conversation. Please tell me,
Yeah.
LA, how? How did you do it? How did you know where to go? And that already sounds like an adventure.
100%. So at the time, I had a manager, and he was kind of like guiding me, I guess, through the music world. Um, and he had a connection in the States, and he's a producer, and he said to me, this opportunity's come up. This producer is interested in recording with somebody locally from South Africa. This is the opportunity. Do you want to go there? I would have to go spend a month there, and I would record an album. So I had a FaceTime, I don't even think there was Zoom then, call with this producer in the States. And he obviously, gave me a background of all the big names that he had worked with. They always the stories that they tell you and all these wonderful things. And I jumped at the opportunity. Luckily, I had the resources at the time to be able to go and spend a month in Los Angeles. And I went there and recorded an album there. I Sadly, now when I think back, I probably, if I had the knowledge that I have now, wouldn't have done it. But I guess, as we say, everything in life happens for a reason, and it's all part of your journey. I don't think it was actually the best experience I ever had. In fact, it was actually an extremely negative experience in the end for me, which I've never actually really spoken about much. Obviously, to the people in my life, I have, but not to the public. So I think, yeah, it turned out to not be what I had thought it would be for me and what it was preempted to be, unfortunately. But that's also a big part of the music industry is people like that. And it's the lessons that we have to learn. And it taught me a lot as a person. So now later on, I'm able to look back and take out the positives out of what was to me actually a negative situation.
Wow, I'm so shocked to hear that.
No, not what you expected.
Yeah, definitely. A real word of warning to anyone else who is really trying to grow as an artist and sees LA as the go to place to develop themselves.
Yeah.
What are some of the things you would warn, maybe if there was someone 16 years old who really wants to sing, has got talent, and wants to go to LA and be the next Charlize Theron? What are some of the things you would warn them about?
I would say it's always hard to say that. And I wouldn't necessarily want to warn anybody about anything because I think everyone's journey is unique. And like I said, sometimes we do have to go through negative experiences in order for the bigger picture and the greater good of our lives. And who we become as people. But I'd say something really important that when I look back on my own journey and reflect is that I was at a very young age almost, I feel like, pushed and molded to be what certain people wanted me to be, and to make specific music that I was being molded into making and being and saying, when that wasn't necessarily true to who I was. And I think a big part of that is, if you aren't true to yourself and don't know who you are within yourself, it allows people and gives them that power to be able to mold and shift you, which is completely my own fault, right? So now that I know exactly who I am, and I'm a lot more grounded in who I am as a person, I can look back and say, wow, if I was there then with what I know now about myself and who I am, I would have made very different choices. So I would say the biggest thing is to be grounded and to know who you are, and be solid in your morals, and what you really actually truly want out of life, and who you want to be in life. Because as much as we love to separate career from personal, there's a very fine line, and I do think it's extremely important, in order for you to be successful in any career, even if it's not entertainment, that you have a solid and strong foundation in knowing who you are and exactly what it is you want, so that people can't take advantage of you.
Wow, I really feel like the voice of yours today is someone who's learned more, grown more in social media, and really defined themselves and how they communicate with their images using IG. And if I'm correct, it was that time, it was before Instagram had really blown up, and it was like the Facebook era.
True. So true. 100%. It was definitely like predominantly Facebook. Instagram was there, but it wasn't like, yeah, I think Instagram influencers and celebs weren't like a thing.
Not quite yet.
Yeah.
And I think, just to give more context to that time, Facebook was, it was accessible first of all. So the new cell phones that had come out were almost as good as the laptop computers. So the screens were a bit bigger, and I think it was before the time of data. So if you had airtime on your phone, you could scroll through and you could comment. The like button wasn't there yet though, but the comments were. And the cool thing at that time was, if you went to a party and there was a photographer there with a DSLR camera, and you could get a very high definition photo, and it would be uploaded to the Facebook page or the album of the party. And that photo was worth like gold, because you could make that your profile picture and you had like status. So going to a party, you really dressed up, and it was like, this is an event. And Facebook was popping. It was wild. And a few people had websites. I mean, those who had their IT infrastructure, who could sort of make a website and put a gallery or two. But it was very difficult to manage a website and all the backup you needed to keep that stock of images. So Facebook, in it being free, it was like the next thing after MySpace. But Facebook was cleaner and easier to use. And at that time, when I was younger, the student nights at nightclubs were like the thing. If you could get to Vakamata in Four Ways Monte Casino, that was like the epitome of that era. You, it was like the thing to do as a young person. And so you went to LA, and you're like, all right, adventure start. Did you go there by yourself?
So I actually went with my manager at the time. His name was Tabo, and so he went with me at the time. So I wasn't completely alone.
Okay,
But
okay.
I was away from my family, which was a big thing for me, because I'm very close to my family. And my grandfather ended up passing away while I was there, in fact, which was a big one for me, because I was extremely close to him. He was like my bestie. So that was a big thing for me, that I couldn't be there for my family and to say goodbye to him when all of that happened, because it was quite unexpected.
Really, really difficult and tragic. My condolences.
Thank you.
While you were in LA, in this era of bling bling in music, did you learn anything there that particular about the arts that you felt you couldn't have learned anywhere else?
Wow, that is actually a very good question. Um, I would say definitely, because I got to work with so many very talented and artistic people. I learned a lot about creative freedom and a lot about kind of being in the moment and improvising. So before going there, I was so used to things being in a structure and okay, we're going to do this like this, and this is how it's going to be, and this is the music we're going to make, and this is how we're going to do it. And when I got there, I saw all these people that would just drop a beat and jump into the booth and just come up with the most amazing track you've ever heard. And it was so cool to watch that creative freedom, and that I just at the snap of a finger, someone can just listen to a melody they've never heard in their lives and come up with the most incredible chorus you've ever heard. And things like that were really cool to experience.
Wow. So you were around high performers who were making content like go, 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 and literally making hits before your eyes? That
Literally.
sounds like quite a process. And something that always strikes out to me about LA, as much as I'd say New York, is that there is an aesthetic, and people are not just their music,
Yeah.
their look, their mentality, and I believe on the internet they now call it an ism. This is my way of life. Did you notice some interesting looks and aesthetics in LA?
Definitely. And funny enough, actually, now that I think back, the main two creative people that I worked with in studio almost had like kind of the aesthetic that's trending now, which is so cool. Because when I thought back then and I looked at them, I thought like, whoa, like this is so cool. And I've never seen this sort of like fashion and vibe. And now it's actually what's a trend today, which is so crazy. Like for example, I remember the one girl used to wear these like, I don't know if you've seen them now, like those super high cut leotards that everyone wears,
Yeah.
almost high cut, like over, like with pants. Like she used to rock those, and those are like a huge trend now that wasn't before. And the one guy that I worked with that was probably the most creative, brilliantly creative individual I've ever met in my life. His name was JJ. And he had face tats and the piercings and like that hip hop swag. And they were really, really aesthetic and really trendy. And it almost felt so natural. And I think that's why I was so drawn to it, because it didn't seem like they were planning this and putting it on. It was just who they were.
Wow. That must have been really, really wild. And I think the first time I saw someone with a face tattoo, I was like, wow, that is a commitment to the look. You are Adidas all in. Wow. Um, and I see you as quite a fashion person. What brand, the most popular that you saw in LA, what were most people wearing?
Geez, that's actually such a good question. I don't even think I can answer that honestly because I don't even remember. But I am extremely into fashion, and I love clothes and shoes and everything to do with fashion. So I did do like I hit quite a lot of the shops outside back then that were in, and one of them was Nasty Girl. That was like one of my favorite stores that I visited. Obviously Victoria's Secret, because you couldn't get that in South Africa either. I'd say those are two of like the biggest brands at the time that I was interested in, that I loved visiting those stores that side, because you couldn't get access to that here then.
So you came back with like a full suitcase stuffed?
Definitely, definitely.
Did you buy your friends any gifts? Or you were like, no, I gotta live for me now?
No, of course. Oh, I'm big on gifts. I love spoiling people. So the fam, friends, yeah. Whenever I go anywhere, yeah, I'm always big on spoiling the people that I love.
Hmm, wow. Did you notice a lot of vintage shops in LA?
I didn't. I think the only reason though that I didn't is because I was in studio pretty much every day that I was there. there were only like I'd say 2 or 3 days that I actually got to kind of explore a bit. And I spent most of the time actually going to restaurants, like trying different food spots more so than I did shopping. I think if I had to go back now, that's something I would definitely look for and something that I definitely like to hit. But I do also obviously remember the sneaker stores that were like crazy. Every sneaker store I went into was just on another level. Um, and all the stores I remember in LA being so aesthetic even back then and having this really cool vibe about them. And there was another store called Dope that then there was quite big. It hadn't really ever taken off here, I don't think, but their merch was crazy and their store was so crazy aesthetic. It almost felt like an art gallery. And there were stores that I visited that had skate parks inside the shop and like it's just such cool stuff. And vending machines with socks in them in these some of these skate stores. Really cool stuff.
Nice. You're really painting such an interesting picture. What makes a nice vibe for a store for you? Because you've mentioned some very interesting brands like Victoria's Secret or Dope Store. And when I walk into a store like that, it almost looks like a nightclub. The interior design, and you really feel part of the community.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. I think personally for me, the stores that I like that resonated with me the most were the more gallery-like stores, if you can call it that. So like that very sleek, monochrome, simplistic aesthetic. That resonates with me a lot more than if I walk into, let's say, a Victoria's Secret, for example, where it's like you explain, like a nightclub, like it's chaos and there's lights and there's clothes and there's colors and there's big chairs and big posters and everything's like crazy. So I find I get like quite overwhelmed in environments like that and I don't really get to appreciate it or take it in. Whereas I found a lot of the other stores like Dope, for example, and some of the skating stores and they like I say, like gallery like. So the clothes are almost displayed like you feel like you're in an art gallery and fashion is art. So I find that so relevant and it speaks a lot of the brand that the store is.
I totally agree. And that really sounds like you really went into the community and see how they shop, and the
Yeah,
shop show you how people think, and you talk to the person behind the counter, and they don't even give you a sales pitch, but they just tell you about the history, or they'll mention some iconic figure who shopped here for the last 5 years, and you literally see the items that they had in the music video that you like, and you really see the whole system of
that's
the
so.
culture. And you mentioned food as well. Was it a lot of Mexican food and you were drinking Starbucks every day?
So sadly, then I wasn't a coffee lover like I am now, which is terrible because I would have taken full advantage. But I ate a lot of Mexican. Yes, Mexican restaurants were everywhere. And I tried like a lot of the big fast food joints that I always wanted to try, the burger joints and that sort of thing. And also just those like random like hot dog stands. And there were so many random like street food stalls and really cool ones that we found. And also surprisingly a lot of like Jewish delis, and I also love those with the most amazing like I speak about it now, but I'll explain. I'm vegan now, so I don't eat any animal products. But then I did, and like the hot beef on rye and all those like classic dishes that I really loved trying while I was there.
Wow, that is really cool that you embrace it and then make the full transition to veganism and know that, you know what, I had my time doing that and now I can focus all the way on this. So you went to Five Guys, or was it In and Out
Yes, I
Burger?
did. I did both. I hit both.
Wow.
I'm gonna be honest. In and Out was, I think, probably my favorite out of everything. I absolutely loved In and Out, but yeah, it was all pretty tough.
Did you ever go to a Waffle House?
I did. There's one, and I've gone completely blank. They even had something called the Obama waffle, where they do chicken and waffles. It's like the famous one. I don't even know what it's called. That sounds so silly. It was so many years ago. But I went there, did the chicken and waffles thing, Didn't love it together, but I love them both like separately, if that makes sense.
Nice.
It's an acquired
But I
taste.
did do it. I gave it a try. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. That LA trip was such an interesting part of your life, but you really were defining yourself more, acquiring skills in that industry. Now, back to SA and bringing back that vibe, that fun, and we particularly like what you're doing on Instagram because now you curate things in such an interesting way with interesting posts and transitioning out of the bling bling era of music, youth culture. Now, I'd say the era we went into after that was more mumble rap, Wiz Khalifa sort of vibe, if I can call it that. And the visuals were also important at that time. Yes, music, the audio too, but like the visual look and feel of everything. When do you remember first seeing a picture of yourself that you were proud of, that really had an effect on you? Could you tell me about an experience like that when you first saw a picture of yourself and you were like,
Is that
wow,
me? Is
who
that,
is that?
did you ever have an experience like that?
Geez, that's actually such a good question. I've never really thought about it like that, to be honest. I can't say I thought of a. Okay, I'll say there was one shoot that was kind of maybe the catapult of that for me. And there was a photographer, his name was Troy Lee at the time. I don't think he's still doing photography, sadly. But he was probably one of my first like proper professional shoots. And I definitely remember looking at the photos when he first sent them to me and thinking like, whoa, because it was the first time I'd seen like a real professional photo that was like professionally edited and professional lighting and it was aesthetic. And I do think that that shoot will always stick in my head. And my best friend is the most talented makeup artist, and she had done my makeup, so it was the first like ready like on point professional shoot with ready creative talented people. And I definitely remember getting those photos and thinking like, wow, like this is the quality of content that I want.
It's amazing that you say that because I think one of the first few pictures that I saw of you was a nightclub photo, maybe at Latinova. I'm not sure of the name.
Yeah.
And you had such a strong look on camera, and the pose, the look, the aesthetic. And I've been a photographer, videographer for quite a while. And one of the reasons I like the camera so much is because it's a tool you can really make some surreal art with. There's like reality, and then there's what you see in the camera. And you really had a skill, a talent at crafting the whole thing for making images that, and it really transitioned well into Instagram. So you did this shoot with Troy Lee, and I'm going to ask you more about that shoot, where it was. But to now, some of the content you make on Instagram and your Instagram feed is so interesting. How did you curate your IG page?
So funny enough, actually, this is my second Instagram page that I currently have now that hasn't really been around for long. So I obviously when my I started developing making music and releasing music and I was in that whole phase of my life, my Instagram was a certain aesthetic, but then I think it wasn't really thought out. It was kind of like just posting the content of what was going on in my career and life at that stage. And then I had built up quite a following on there and hit a point in my life of self-realization and change, and I completely deleted the account and started a new account recently. I'd say like maybe a year ago or whatever. And I think now it's Instagram has changed so much, for the better and the worse, I think. So as much as like aesthetics is so important now, I think it is a lot more than it was then. Then it was more about sharing what was actually going on in your life at that stage. Whereas now I don't feel like it's really become that anymore. Um, it's more of like showcasing things, whether it be brands or products or whatever. So I think it's very different now, but I still try. For me, I find Instagram as my creative outlet. So I work in the motor industry. So I'm in a like quite a professional industry from Monday to Friday. And I find Instagram is my creative outlet where I get to be creative and aesthetic and artsy in the form of visuals, which I think is really cool and powerful.
That
That is
is
going
going
to
to
be
be
a
a
perfect
perfect
segue
segue
into
into the next
my next
question,
question,
which
which is
is
now
now
you're
that you're
going into
going
the
into the
lane
lane
of a
of
German
German
automotive
automotive
enthusiast.
enthusiast, how
How did
how
you
how
craft
did you
this,
craft this
enthusiasm for
enthusiasm for
cars?
cars?
So it's actually quite a funny story because when it all started, I wouldn't necessarily say I was a car lover or a petrol head. So like I said, when I got to the stage of my life where I was reflecting and having self realizations, I decided that I wanted to get into a professional industry. I didn't want to try make money out of music and dance anymore, and I wanted to grow up, so they'd call it, and become a professional and make money. And that's what I wanted to do. And my father has been in the motor industry my entire life and most of his. He's been in the motor industry for the past over 40 years or 30 years. So I was like, okay, I need to get a job. What am I going to do? Cars. So I got an interview at a car dealership at Audi Rivonia. And I went for the interview not knowing a single thing about cars. I couldn't tell you what a 1 liter versus a 2 liter engine was. Okay. And they took a chance on me and they took me on as a cadet and they said that we'll train you to sell new vehicles. Um, and at that stage, I was just like, I want to make money. I need money and I want a job. I need a job. And so they took a chance on me. And within a month of being trained there, I started selling cars and I was actually really good at it. And from there, that passion of being around these incredible vehicles and actually learning the technology behind them and the mechanics, and not only the sales side of it, which was also fun for me because I obviously enjoy people and sales is extremely thrilling. I got to develop this passion for the metal and for the cars, and it taught me so much. And from there I started to look at other brands and really started to diverse and, like I say, develop this love that I have for cars now.
Totally. And I think that transition for you really makes a lot of sense because you already are a great people person and you have an understanding of marketing and the social media side. And these last 2 years, we've seen how important and powerful good social media can be. So it definitely makes a lot of sense that this is a new lane for you to make for yourself. And looking back to what we just talked about, the bling bling era and LA, a car is so essential in LA. And even for a lot of music videos, because you could play music in a car, it had a beautiful aesthetic. And the movie, The Fast and the Furious, the whole franchise was
Then
really blowing up then when those movies were about cars before it was something else, the thing it is now. And having that sexy car with the lines, the shiny parts, the rims, the spinners, a car was always part of your brand and you and what you are about. And in a way, looking back now, it makes perfect sense that you were supposed to in that sort of lane.
Yeah.
And this
and
project V8 No Heartbreaks, this is a movie. This is wild. Please tell me about this. Where did you shoot it? How did you come up with the concept? Tell me everything.
Yeah, okay, awesome. So this was one of like my favorite things that I've ever shot. So that car's a 1972 Mustang Grand Coupe, obviously a V8. And it was in our, well, this kind of won't make sense because you don't know where I'm working now, but I'll explain. So this was in my dealership stock of where I am now. And it was mine and my dad's car. And it was so close to my heart. That car is absolutely magnificent. And someone contacted me. I'd posted it on my Instagram before because obviously I am just obsessed with it, and it's left-hand drive and it's just so beautiful. There's something really special to me about that car. And Graham, the guy that shot the video, contacted me. He's brilliant in his field, and he contacted me and said that he'd be interested in shooting something with the Mustang that I'd posted. And it was like the best message ever because I was so excited because I'd always wanted to do something with this car because, like I said, it's just so close to my heart and it's really special to me. And we found an old, like abandoned warehouse where one of the panel beaters that I use works. And we pulled up through there, and Graham is the king of lighting. As you can see, he's a bloody creative genius. And if I tell you, you won't believe me, when we didn't have a concept, we hadn't discussed a plan, we hadn't discussed what shots we were going to do. We just jumped in the car, we got this Mustang to this abandoned warehouse, and he set up and he said, let's do this. Let's just make some cool stuff. And that's exactly what we did. And it was such an amazing, fun, creative process because I got to take him through the car and show him all the little details and all the things that I love about the vehicle. And he captured that so perfectly. And I think we really got to tell a story through it as well, which happened naturally, which I love the most. So it was really organic and authentic.
Stunning. And I can tell you a few things as someone watching that I liked. I like how you crafted this whole look, the cheetah print pants, the tattoos, the rolling stones, crop top, the hair, the poise, the look. You really seem like yourself, comfortable, and it really is stunning. You could say you've grown a lot from the shoot you did with Troy Lee, where you almost have to make poses. How do I look? To now, you really seem in the zone. Feminine, strong, all these good things. The ballet, the Latin, the way you're interacting with the car, it's very artistic. How can somebody learn some of these skills? If I'm a photographer or if I'm a model, how can I make a project vibe like this?
I'd say I think the biggest thing for me that I've learned making contact is that the more true you can stay to yourself, the better. The more authentic the content can be, the better. I always find it comes across, you can almost see it in a visual and feel it. You can feel the energy in a video or a picture when something is forced and unnatural. And I do understand that, sometimes you'll have to showcase a specific brand that might not be a part of your everyday life. I get that. But in the grand scheme of things, I'd say the biggest thing when making content is to let it resonate you. And that's the best part of it, to let it speak of you and your energy, because that's what you are doing. You're sharing a part of you without talking, and in a beautiful way that's universal. So I think the best advice I could give to people is to stay true to you, because what might work for me and a pose that could work for my body might not work for you or for someone else. And everyone is so different and everyone's look is so different. And I think the best thing is to be able to work with people that also allow you the creative freedom to be yourself in front of the camera. And vice versa for photographers. For me, I love working with photographers that let you be yourself and try different things. Although it's always nice to have guidance and to have a general idea of what you're trying to achieve, I think it's really important not to get lost in the end result, to rather enjoy and be present in the journey getting there. And the content will speak for itself then.
I'm just taking notes. Important points were said. And my big takeaway for today is defining yourself, defining your body, defining your mindset, and not just how you look, but the things you put around yourself, and really setting a direction. You also have a very interesting collection of tattoos and piercings. Please tell me the meaning of
Yeah.
just a few
Cool.
Of
of
the
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 tattoos you've
tattoos you've
collected.
collected.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. I can definitely do that. So I've got, I'll point out like three of my favorite and most meaningful, I'd say, four of my most meaningful tattoos. On the one side of behind my arm, I've got a bee. And that is for my mom. So we call my mom Honey instead of Granny, because my sister's has had two babies and she's a granny now. And instead of calling her Granny, we call her Honey. So I got a bee for my Honey. So that's the one. On the other side, I've got a Mickey Mouse, and he's holding a lily flower. And the Mickey Mouse represents my grandpa that I spoke about earlier, that has sadly passed on, but his nickname was Mick. Everyone, and since his childhood, has always called him Mickey. So that my Mickey Mouse represents my grandpa Mick. And he's holding a lily flower because my very first niece that was born 3 years ago, her name is Lily Ray. So my lily flower represents Lily Ray, my niece, who's my absolute best friend in the whole world. And then I've also got a ladybug on my hand here. So that represents my sister. So my one sister, Carla, this ladybug is a good omen for her. It was really representative at a very specific phase of her life recently. And I got that to always remind me of her and to represent her. And then I've got a heart on my leg for my other sister, Romy, that represents my other sister. And an elephant. I have an elephant behind my ear. I don't know, somewhere there. And that represents my dad. So I got an elephant behind my ear because he is always right. And I spent far too many years not listening to him. And that's just a reminder of the wisdom that he has to always share with me and to always stay true to listening to that.
It really does speak to you and your love of family and love of nature. And when I saw the bee, I thought it was the Gucci bee. I was like, oh wow, she really loves Gucci.
Oh, thank goodness.
But there's more meaning to it. Always more to the story.
True that.
And you've placed them quite well. Who helped you with the placement and making sure it looked aesthetic?
So my oldest sister is covered in tattoos. She has a full sleeve and massive leg piece, and she's got like just the most amazing art on her body. And I always drag her to pretty much almost every tattoo appointment I've ever had. I've obviously got a couple more around, but I've dragged her to pretty much every appointment, and she helps me. I always have an idea of where I want to do it, but she helps me with getting that like perfect size and placement when they put it on you before they actually start to ink you.
It looks like you really did do your research and planned it out. The one you showed in the music video, in the IGTV video, the one that's underneath your lip.
What?
How did you come up with that concept? How did you do it?
So funny enough, it was actually the very first tattoo I ever got. So I wanted a tattoo really badly, but at that stage, I wasn't sure exactly where my career path and life path was going to take me. So I wanted it somewhere that was for me and not for anyone else, and that where, it could be hidden if it needed to be. And I was going through Pinterest with my sister, and we were looking at inspos, and then I started to come across mouth pictures, lip pics. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's it. Like I want to get a tattoo there. And it was actually quite difficult to find someone willing to do it because, funny enough, not all tattoo artists are like very eager or keen to tattoo in the mouth for some reason. But I found a guy that was happy to do it, and I just literally went. Whenever I do things like this, they're usually quite impulsive decisions, so it's not really thought out for too long. And I just went for it, and I got the tattoo. And it actually, everyone always asks me, oh, that must have been so painful, but it wasn't so at all. And I love it to this day, and it's really special to me.
Definitely. I think if the passion is there, you'll make it work.
So true.
I've seen all types of things. Did you ever see Grace Neutral? She injected ink into her eyeballs, and I was like, wow, wow, that's dedication.
That's crazy.
That's definitely hardcore.
That's so cool. Yeah, it's very hardcore.
Now, I'd really love you to give some advice to our
to our
listeners,
listeners, and
and
you've
you've
given us
given
some
us some
awesome
awesome tattoo
tattoo
advice.
advice.
And
And
because you
because
now
you now
work
work
with
with
some
some
really
really
amazing
amazing
automobiles,
automobiles,
and you're
and you're
around some
around some
amazing
amazing
shapes
shapes
and
and
lines,
lines and
the whole
the whole
thing,
thing, what is
what
a
is a
hot
hot
car to
car
you?
to
What
you?
makes like
What is
a
like a
stunning
stunning car?
car?
Wow, I think that's such a good question. And I think it's hard to answer that, with one specific thing, because there's many different aspects of the car that speak to me. And I think the fact that each brand, although you'll notice, especially now these days, the brands are all becoming very similar or have very similar kind of key features that run through, there's always something extremely unique and always something that they come up with that's unique to that brand, which I find beautiful because that's where the creativity really speaks of the brand. Personally, I'm a huge SUV fan. As much as I do love my supercars and all of that, I'm a huge lover of SUVs. That's my thing. So I don't know if you've seen the Lamborghini Urus, but that is one of my absolute favorites. For me, what speaks to me most about that car, of course, the aggressive exterior and the lines that we discussed, but the interior and the attention to detail. And you see it a lot in those incredible brands like Aston Martin and Lamborghini, and that every detail when you look at that cockpit is thought out and planned, and nothing is accidental, from the stitching to the buttons to the entire design, and it all, every small tiny little detail just all comes together perfectly.
I definitely agree. And sometimes when I look at certain cars, the Lamborghini you mentioned, certain cars for me have very big personalities. Like some people could say this car feels aggressive, this car feels more brooding. And another thing I picked up about certain cars is that some cars feel very masculine and some cars feel very feminine. Does that sound about right since you're around many cars?
I completely agree. And I think definitely the detailing has a lot to do with that, like these lines that we speak of in the body of the car, and things like mags, and somewhat even, I think, down to the finest thing is the paint coat. That I do definitely think almost somewhat gives off a more masculine or more feminine feel, which I think doesn't, though that's very tricky to make sure that that doesn't apply to who drives the vehicle. I don't necessarily think, that means, oh, because that car's got a slightly more feminine energy, I'd like to call it, in its creative being, that only girls can drive that car. Or, I think often we attach these stigmas then to vehicles, which I do somewhat think is unnecessary. But I completely agree with you that the detailing and the attention to detail, the lines, all the artifacts that all come together do give off a somewhat sometimes feminine or masculine.
Totally. And I would say you are a very feminine person. Very, very feminine. And I could picture you in a Q7, which I would say is a very masculine, very tough car. And that would be a lovely contrast for you. And you would also look stunning in a more feminine car like the Ferrari F40. If I had that car, I would say her, she. Those are the pronouns I would use for that vehicle. Very super feminine. And I could be the manliest man ever, and I would say, I'm taking her on a date. my F40 Ferrari.
And you'd look damn cool
Definitely.
in it too. Yeah,
A pink Ferrari, any day, I would have no qualms about that.
agreed.
Or even a VW Bug. And I think when you've comfortably defined yourself as you are, as much as your vehicle defines you, you can also define your vehicle.
Yeah.
Not to go straight into car philosophy, if I can call it that.
If I can,
No, but I do agree with that,
And you know,
100%.
I love shapes, I love the bodies, living things, crafted things, they're all amazing. And another thing you are very passionate about that I've seen on your page is fitness and movement, and your journey with that has also been one of amazing growth and learning. And I've been seeing a lot of lovely posts about yoga. When did you first encounter yoga, and how special has it been to you?
So yeah, so I had my first yoga class, I'd say probably about 2 years ago. And then I took a little bit of a gap, a little bit of a break from it, just because things got, sometimes life gets in the way, unfortunately, of the things we want to do. And then I've picked it up since last year again, full force. And yoga is one of the most amazing things that I ever found, definitely. And it's something that I recommend to everybody that I speak to. I'm like, start yoga, do it, just start yoga. Because it's so special as an exercise form, because it is the physical aspect of it, and giving you that stamina and growth physically that you're looking for, as well as mentally. And I think that's the key. So yes, you can go to gym 6 days a week and pump machines in the gym, and you'll see results physically 100%. But what's going on in here and in here is really, really important. And I think that's what's so special to me about yoga, is that it not only challenges me physically, but it challenges me mentally and spiritually as well, which it also gives you so many things that are beneficial to you on your mat as well as off your mat, and makes you very aware of specific things that we easily forget about and overlook in everyday life.
In contrast to consumerism, yoga is like the perfect addition to what you're doing. Wellness, community, and I saw you did a clip with Alicia Moves, and as a guy who does yoga, many people see yoga in a feminine way, but I do it in a more masculine way. And
Yeah.
how has the yoga community been for you?
So I think what I love, and like you mentioned, Alicia, who is my current yogi. I think what I've noticed that I love about the yoga industry is that people they just are. If that makes sense, in the sense that nobody is judgmental and nobody's trying to look at you and say, oh, but you're doing that wrong. Or, you'll often see on like gym pages, they always want to mock people that are using a machine wrong, or judge people if someone's eating egg whites and they have a piece of bread, or things like that. Whereas I feel like yoga allows you to just be, and no one's judging you, because it's a constant journey of growth, and you're never wrong, you're never at fault, and there's always room to grow and to learn, and you never have to feel or be ashamed of that in the yoga community. I think people are open and supportive, and I think that's so important, and it's a beautiful thing to share.
Self-acceptance and self-love all the way.
Amen.
And did that also play a part in your transition to being vegan?
Yes, I think definitely. I'd say my biggest grounding motivation to go vegan was my one sister. Carla, my middle sister, has been vegan for a couple of years now. And she has slowly over the years just made me really aware of my ignorance, I would say, because that's actually all it comes down to, that I spend too much time thinking, oh, but I love the taste of cheese, or, oh, but I love this. And I chose to turn a blind eye to what was actually going on, and how toxic that whole industry actually is. And I think she was amazing in my awakening of realizing that it's not okay to be ignorant anymore. I'm not okay with what I'm supporting. And now it's time for me to actually be active in making a change and doing something about it. And I think that definitely yoga comes into that in the sense of presence and being aware of the now and what's going on now, and being aware of it and doing something about it.
Totally. Eating more consciously, more mindfully, being aware of what we're doing to the environment and what you're doing to your own body
Mm-hmm.
is definitely something this time we are hearing more and more about. What have been some of the benefits of this new outlook, this new change that you've done? New energy, feeling better, looking better.
Yeah.
Those are usually the benefits a lot of vegans tell me about.
Definitely. So I've definitely seen a major change in my energy. I used to feel sick all the time. I used to constantly have stomach ache. I used to suffer from indigestion. I was always feeling sick. And yes, I loved food and I'd overindulge, but I always felt lethargic. And like I said, I always had stomach ache and all these horrible things. And when I went vegan, which was only in January, so I'm sure I will still see many more benefits to it as I go along my journey, but I felt a complete change in my energy. I felt healthier. Getting up in the mornings was easier. I also became a lot more creative with my food. And, you don't end up just resorting to a sandwich or whatever. You start to actually explore vegetables and spices and all these amazing things that we have that we maybe don't use. Um, so yeah, it definitely, obviously now, like, my fruits and veg intake is increased as well, which immediately has benefits for things like your hair, your skin, and all of that. So for me, I've only seen positive benefits, and I highly recommend the change to people that want to do it or that are ready to do it.
Even if you can't go all in, try 50%, try 70%. Just try pass.
100%. Yeah, small steps. Every small bit makes a big difference.
Wow. And I think it ties in so well with your love of exercise and this positive lifestyle and really developing a stunning physique. What advice would you give to anyone out there? And I was doing some research on the Pareto principle, and they speak about how for anything in life, 80% of your results come from about a main 20%, the vital few of what you're doing. So for your physique, what were the essential 20% things that you were doing to, build a body that can kill on Instagram?
Well, thank you. I think definitely from being active from such a young age consistently throughout my whole life definitely does help, because you have things like muscle memory and all of that come into play of building a physique. Also, then it comes in with the food. So actually going vegan, I lost a lot of unwanted body weight without trying and without having to diet and try all these fads and cut out carbs and all these things. I personally don't believe in doing things like that. And switching things over with my diet helped me lose a lot of unwanted weight without having to do anything unhealthy. And it just happened naturally. So I think the combination and finding the balance between being active and having physical exercise, as well as managing what happens in the kitchen and what you're putting into your body, I think it's equally as important to gaining the physique that you want. And also to not be afraid of weights. I think that stigma is, thank goodness, kind of dying, if not dead already now in this day and age. But people for so long, like girls, were afraid to lift weights, and they just wanted to run on the treadmill for 3 hours and sweat. And actually that's like the worst thing to do for your body, so it's good to be strong and not only focus on just how you look, but how you feel too.
Totally. You can do it in a feminine way. I want to thank you so much for an awesome podcast, ladies and gentlemen, Lil Red. And you really gave us some incredible insight into your life, your trip to LA, your changing lanes, presenting yourself, defining yourself, and it really was a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so nice to see you again, even if it's via video, and chatting. Thank you so much.